And then welcome to Insight, everyone. I'm Nnamdi. This episode will explore government's efforts towards boosting internal security in Nigeria. It becomes more critical as we approach a major national milestone, and by that I mean the 2023 general elections. We will take a look at some of the past incidents that threatened Nigeria's internal security while questioning past efforts and new approaches to be deployed alongside projected spendings and projects in securing Nigeria this 2023 and beyond, of course. Let's kickstart the conversation. I'm fascinated with the discourse on national monuments and assets and how much is being done to preserve and
look into the language issue. We have turned English to become like a pride value in our own cultural values.
National cash transfer is not a COVID-19.
Invasion 1897 was a deliberate tactic.
You know, many of these people coming to the urban areas now.
And applications, there are terms and conditions that
of course it is the union of two people, a man and a woman coming together.
My name is Nnamdi.
And I'm Elizabeth Omori.
As far back as 1957, the Nigerian government, under the then leadership of Tafawa Balewa, inaugurated the Ministry of Internal Affairs, with a charge to oversee the internal security of Nigeria. Of course, a lot has since changed, and the changes are not just limited to the name alone, which was later redefined, by the way, much later to Ministry of Interior. But the ministry's mandates pretty much expanded in scope. The fact of the matter is that inherent with the responsibility of boosting Nigeria's internal security is the arduous task of managing the complexities and highly political imperatives of transforming the institutions and organizations responsible for dealing with security threats to Nigeria and its citizens. My first guest actually understands this all too well, what it entails, and will be speaking to the issue is Honorable Aliu Gebi, Senior Special Advisor to the Minister of Interiors on Security, and is also the National Coordinator, Security Governance Initiative. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So, I am looking at some of the core mandates of the Ministry of Interior, including the processing of international passports, coordinating the Independence and National Day celebrations, recruiting into whether it's the fire service or the correctional service, immigration service, and the NSCDC. Of course, there are other mandates as well, like granting Nigerian citizenship. But this, I don't want you to outline them for me or the rest. I know it's a gamut, but what I need is for you to tell me how these mandates, or rather the implementation or otherwise, of these mandates as a collective inspire public confidence, in the system. Considering some of our realities, and I'm pretty sure you know what I mean when I say realities. I'm talking about the multiple security glitches we experienced, maybe not in 2022 alone. In fact, just the other day again, we're talking about some other glitches. I heard that almost 160 Nigerians renounced their citizenship. So, like I said, my question is it possible that rather than inspire public confidence, growing lapses in internal security and how the system has responded over time is engendering public loss of confidence? Is that the case?
Absolutely not. And thank you very much for having me here. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone. Just a little correction.
Yes, please.
The mandate of the Ministry of Interior, as enshrined in the Constitution 1999 as amended, is security of lives and properties, and citizenship integrity. Now, you can go on to expand these from
into
now. Correct.
Yes, the breakdown.
Correct.
Perfect. That's one. Thank you for clarifying that.
And if you go back again to the Constitution, where it is pronounced without ambiguity, where the precept of internal security is the sole mandate of the Ministry of Interior. Then you now juxtapose that to a Ministry of Interior that does not oversight the police, And without the police, then how can you say you're providing?
Yeah, because wasn't it until 2019 that the president removed the Ministry of Police Affairs from the Ministry of Interior?
Correct. When this administration came into being, 2015,
yes,
one of the first pronouncements by the President Muhammadu Buhari, was the merger of Ministry of Police Affairs and Ministry of Interior. And the former Chief of Army Staff, General Abdurrahman Bello Dambazo, was given the task of operationalizing fully the Ministry of Interior. Now, before the advent of Buhari's administration, I could go as far as to say there really wasn't any functioning operational Ministry of Interior. You had Ministry of Interior, Internal Affairs, civil servants, and then you had the agencies operating on their own with minimal supervision. Then you had the board, which was also operating on its own without really any intersection with the parent ministry, and even less so with the agencies. So when General Dambazo came, the mandate given to him by President Buhari was to fully operationalize Ministry of the Interior. Having been a former Chief of Army Staff, there would be fewer people with that capacity to fully unpack, repackage, and operationalize Ministry of the Interior. And to a large extent, the first 4 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, this was done in a very, very systematic way. I remember one of the first things President Buhari had to do was there were 2,000 immigration personnel that were enlisted, just the tail end of Goodluck Jonathan's administration. And just as they were enlisted, they were sacked. One of the first things President Muhammadu Buhari had to deal with the leadership of Ministry of Interior was to bring them back. President Buhari said they should bring them back. One of the promises President Buhari made to APC was to ensure that the youth get employment. Then how would we now, just like that, send packing 2,000 youth? And I'm proud to say they were brought back. Out of the 2,000, 888 were reabsorbed, and the others, because of one issue or the other, some had moved on, some were no longer interested, some had other issues, would not come back. But this is a singular achievement that has gone unnoticed.
Okay, great. And I thank you so much for giving us this context. But then I would like for you to just take a step back and look at the core question that we asked about the glitches in internal security, and I did reference a couple of examples, and whether or not the happenstance or the frequency of occurrence, and then our response generally has inspired public confidence or not. I mean, even though I know you had you did say no, not to that. I would like for you to expand a bit on that. Yeah.
You see, public confidence is a function of public consensus and public belief and public ownership of systems. If Nigerians would not take ownership of their systems, then the system, to use your word, will keep churning out glitches. But there is no ownership. And I like to say the only time that we want to think to believe we are Nigerians is when you pick up your passport and you want to leave Nigeria. And once you leave Nigeria, you cease to be a Nigerian. And when you return, from the point of return and you give your passport back, you cease to be a Nigerian again. So that weak sense of identity is not a function of internal security, it's not a function of Ministry of Interior, it's not a function of the presidency, it's a function of our own collective inability to define what it means based on consensus, what it means to be a Nigerian. What set of value systems are we adopting as Nigerians? Why am I a Nigerian? So you talked about the people who renounced their citizenship of Nigeria.
I did also.
Yeah, but then there were 250 people that President Muhammadu Buhari granted Nigerian citizenship to. And most of them...
And more to come, as a matter of fact, because I know there are some applications being processed at the moment.
And there are some that have been on the waiting list for 32 years. You understand what I mean? And those people also taking the Nigerian citizenship, most of them would have to renounce their own citizenship. So it's nothing peculiar when people renounce citizenship. It happens. Some people renounce even the United States citizenship, Canadian citizenship. So that's not the issue here. But in terms of our internal security challenges, the main problem that we have is we have a backload of traditional grievances that were never addressed.
You know, I was actually going to come to that, especially when you mentioned the issue of the weak sense of identity. I was going to say that, look, that I understand there are various elements critical to the management of security within the border of a country. military. I mean, but I wanted you to talk about the critical components, whether human, even especially since you mentioned these weak sets of identity, whether they are human, whether they are technological, or whether they are systems that we have lacked in the past, and over time that exacerbates an already bad situation, as much as making some of our internal security organizations and agencies almost seemingly unable to deliver on their core mandates. I mean, I do not want to reference further incidents like maybe the jailbreaks that happened in 2022.
We can talk about
yes,
the jailbreaks.
Yes, please, then go ahead.
Now, if you want to talk about the jailbreaks, for example, how many people know that most of our prisons were built in 1919, for example? They are so old and nothing had been done to upgrade them.
I'd like for you to do this when you're identifying instances or incidents. Can you tie that to perhaps the lapses that exist in that sector, whether it's human, whether it's system, or whether it's technology? Just our viewer gets a very good idea of what you're...
But you see, the problem of decay, like corruption, is something that takes a long time for you to begin to see.
That's why I said over time, because I'm not just talking about the emergence of the Buhari administration.
Correct.
I mean, pretty much before then, as a matter of fact.
Correct. If you look at it again, critically speaking, before the advent of this administration, have you ever heard of any reforms being carried out in the Nigerian prison service as it was then? Absolutely not. In fact, where I come from in the north, fathers would live in their will, stating clearly that my son must not work as a gang robber. It was seen as a very demeaning...
Sorry, what was that again?
Gang robber.
Oh, okay.
Prison warden.
Prison warden.
It was something that was perceived to be very, very, very dirty and very low in our society because of the poor perception, poor management of that component of our society. And we cannot have a society without the prison system. Jump back to now President Buhari's administration. We presented, President Muhammadu Buhari adopted and approved the new Correction Service Act, which moved us from the punitive to the correctional. So prison is no longer seen as where you go and you get tortured and you come out with a new graduation of certain more advanced criminology, so to speak. It is now a reformative process that even includes DDR. We are not latching on the success of that. Rather,
have you ever known the full meaning of DDR?
De-radicalization, demobilization, and rehabilitation.
Just so we make it clear, so they understand.
So meaning for you to go in as a defective product and for you to come out at the point of reinsertion into society as a refined product. This administration did it. And if you were to unpack again the Correction Services Act, because it's no longer the Nigerian Prison Service, legally speaking, it is now the Nigerian Correction Service, because it is corrective. If you unpack it, you'll begin to see the humane face of the system and how the system has evolved to the point where it is now. That's on the one side. I know the next thing would be congestion, facility, and so on and so forth. How many people know that this administration has built, is in the process of building 6 supermax, super capacity, 3,000 capacity zonal prisons all over the country. The one in Kano, for example, in Jangoza is at 97% completion. And in terms of where we're coming from, we could say this is world class, world standard, where the full rights of the convict, the inmate, the awaiting trial is given. In fact, there is absolutely total segregation between those awaiting trial and those who are convicted. So it's highly stratified. This is work in process. This is work in progress, and we are achieving that. Then if you look at what the Minister of Interior has continued to do, again, to further re-energize not only the Correction Service, but also the NSCDC, the National Security Civil Defense Corps. So all the calls for National Guard or candidates, the politicians saying will employ millions of people and so on and so forth. We have the civil defense. This administration also created the Agro Rangers. And the Agro Rangers were the only reason why, up to a point, before stability returned in the Northeast and Borno State, farmers could go to their farms. They would blow the bugle in the morning at 6 a.m. after prayer. They will line up with their gun trucks. Farmers will join their caravan. They will go to the farms. The security will provide a corridor, internal, external corridor, will stay with them until 6 p.m., blow the bugle, everybody loads up and they go back. How many people have celebrated that? When you talk about number 3, the Safe Schools Initiative, that the civil defense, again, it has deployed. And
that is quite topical, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Now, again, we can go on and on and on. How many Nigerians even know that we have a transport marshal program after the unfortunate Kaduna train incident. So these are things that are successes that we're not looking at, but we rather like to look at the problems. Are there problems? Yes, there are problems.
I was going to say that, are they, is it all roses?
No.
Are we smelling like roses here?
My brother, there are problems, but also we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves. Could we do better? Absolutely. But this democracy is only as old as from 1999 to now. Everything a 25-year-old knows is from 1999 to now. ATMs, music conquering the entire world, ICT, etc., etc. It is from 1999 to now. So if you look at it from that perspective, we are not doing too badly. Insecurity in the Northeast, for example, the doctrine of our military were never trained from academy or the depot to fight Nigerians. The doctrine is also to fight an external aggressor. Then we found ourselves in this unfortunate situation where it is Nigerians killing Nigerians. And our military had to learn on the spot, while on the job, how to counter this. And there is nowhere in the history of any insurgency in the world, from the Philippines to the Malaya period, wherever, where it has been recorded the type of success that we're having, where you are having tens of thousands of exits, we are deploying DDRR, and we're still fighting. It has never been done. So maybe perhaps the Nigerian model is something that should be properly situated for other nations to come and learn.
You know, and I mean, I listen and I hear you reel out these successes. I mean, and it's, I mean, they're all there. We will be taking a look at some of them as time goes on, and just so we enlighten Nigerians on some of these things that are happening. I think the media has a key role to play here as well. But then, and I'm sure you also know this, and you're aware that the defense and security sector has been allotted, I think it's about 2.98 trillion or so. You know, that's about 13.4% of the 2023 budget. And I haven't listened to all of the successes you've rolled out. I would like to know how this funding, making the projection now, can help translate to impact in our security sector reform in a manner that transforms now persons, transforms institutions, and then the agencies responsible, especially those under the Ministry of Interior for internal security in Nigeria.
Excellent point. Again, let me take you back to the Macpherson Constitution. The Federal Fire Service was annexed out of the Nigerian Police Force. The last time the Nigerian Federal Fire Service procured brand new firefighting platforms was 1939.
Whoa.
1939.
1939 will be how many
1939,
years
certainly
ago?
older than you are. That was the last time purpose-built, factory-new firefighting platforms were bought for the Federal Fire Service. The next time that we would buy for Nigeria was 2015, under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. I recall vividly, when this administration came on board, the entire Federal Fire Service capacity in Nigeria had only 2 vehicles. And none of them were roadworthy. In fact, one didn't have tires. But as of now that I'm talking to you, through a consistent, coherent process of acquisition and deployment of personnel, as well as equipment, this administration has procured over 200. To the extent that the image of the Federal Fire Service has been totally transformed. Under Agbeni Rauf Arigbeshola, also as Minister of Interior, I mean, the zonal offices were opened. We have one in the Northeast, one in every zone in the country. Training, certification, oversight, and policy development. This has been key and central to the Rauf Arigbeshola's leadership of the Ministry of Interior. So it is totally reformed, and it is an ongoing process that unless someone new comes in as president and scuttles it, we are on our way to having perhaps one of the best firefighting capacity anywhere on the African continent. The second issue also, if you take, again, let's go back to civil defense. Civil defense started as a volunteer force after the Civil War. It never got any constitutional backing, so to speak, until when President Muhammadu Buhari came, and then the NSCDC Act was tinkered with, re-energized, and then they finally got constitutional provision. To the extent that when the military clears a particular space in the Northeast, for example, instead they will hold for a little while and then they would have to push. They would now send a request to Ministry of Interior. We require, for example, 5,000 civil defenders, 3,000 policemen to be deployed as part of the gradual restoration of civil authority to those liberated areas, so that the military can push and they would now come and hold and administer and control the territory. This is what led to some of the successes that we're seeing. And we're not talking about it. Then, lastly, if you look at Every other administration until recently, until Muhammadu Buhari's administration, we have always been dogged with one scandal of recruitment in interior or the other, especially immigration. You recall the last one, the unfortunate one, where a lot of our young
lives
ones
were
died.
lost.
Correct.
Yeah.
In the last 7-8 years, have you heard anything like that? So there are reforms that are ongoing, but the reforms are ongoing while the problems are also cropping up. Now we were talking about...
Give us an idea of where we're likely to see the bulk of investments for 2023 when it comes to the Ministry of Interiors.
Civil defense.
Okay.
Immigration service.
Okay.
And I would go to the extent of saying... well, federal fire service is ongoing, but civil defense and immigration, we cannot secure our territory if we don't have a fully functioning, capable, competent immigration service. We cannot augment what the police would be doing in the Nigerian space, in the Nigerian territory, in terms of internal security, if civil defenders are not brought up to spec and given the capacity that they require. This will happen without a shadow of a doubt. Then you talked about the procurement for the military, 2-point-something trillion naira. While I was in Parliament, we advocated, in fact, we thought the entire budget of the Federal Republic of Nigeria was not enough, nearly enough to equip the military. We proposed that we do oil for weapon platforms. But unfortunately, it fell apart. Perhaps there are kinks or glitches in the system that need to be refined. But the best way that we can equip our internal security mechanisms, as well as our defensive mechanisms as far as the military is concerned, instead of these bits and pieces buying, is to do exactly that. Trade with China, the US or India. We will give you oil pre-sale for the next 10 years. You will give us whatever platforms we require on the spot. But having said that, I must say, with the acquisition that we have now, the platforms that have been acquired by Nigeria, if we don't rank second on the African continent, I think we'll rank third. But I don't think there's any country on this continent that can challenge us, external aggressor, and will go scot-free.
You know, a couple of seconds ago, you referenced the immigration service. I'd like for you to talk a bit on the immigration service and these operations in Nigeria, because of course you did also infer just how important the imperatives for having a sound and effective immigration service and how that is critical to internal security of any country, as a matter of fact. But then let me quickly take you up on an issue that went quite viral. As a matter of fact, here on the NTA, we had a special report, almost about 8 minutes on that same issue, and that's on the backlog of international passport. Where are we at the moment on international passport applications in the country? I understand that between 2015 and 2022, 9 million were processed by the NIS. What is the centralized data on that as of January 2023?
Excellent question. The current Minister of Interior, being the person that he is, one of the most rational people I've ever had the privilege of working with, looked at the system.
Would you say any other thing about your boss?
My boss? He's a fantastic person.
No, I'm just saying, I wouldn't say my boss is terrible. I mean, not on TV.
No. Believe me, if you know me as well as others do, I don't hold back. If it is good, I'll say it is
straight
good.
Shooter.
Absolutely, and probably that is why I get along with my minister, because he's also a straight shooter. And this is why in CPC we voted for Buhari, because he was a straight shooter. He is a straight shooter. So yes. He was able to unpack and decouple the system. There are bottlenecks. Most of the bottlenecks are bureaucratic. The processes were never streamlined. The processes were never fully transferred into almost a contactless process. It was started, but it was stopped. Don't forget that this e-immigration process system started from 2007 only. Now, in terms of backlog, also Nigerians, our people, sometimes we have our own problems. You know your passport is going to expire. You don't start the process for renewal of that expiration until the day before it is about to expire, and then you tell the system that you need to travel, you and your family, 2 days later to the United Kingdom. And you make a show of it. You are willing to do whatever needs to be done for you to get that. So it also created a system of patronage, as these things tend to do. And because of the system of patronage, this is my opinion, you begin to get backlogs. So Ogbeni Rauf Arigbeshala came and detached and removed that component where if you would even get in touch with somebody, where there could then allegedly there could be a system of patronage. It became seamless, contactless. You apply from wherever you are and your appointment is scheduled. And on your scheduled day, you go, you get captured. On the day of delivery, your passport is either mailed to you or you come pick it up. The review is out there. But what I had wanted you to talk about was before 2015, the Nigerian visa was a piece of paper that you could go to any business center and print and come to Nigeria. In 2015, one of the biggest scandals that this administration faced security-wise was an Egyptian cleric that was en route to Nigeria from Lebanon, but was intercepted in Egypt. And when they looked at his passport, he was coming to Nigeria. And it was then that it became clear that we had to move into a secure biometric visa issuing process. And this was done within 1 year. So the Nigerian visa today is one of the most advanced in terms of security and technology of any visas in the world. This is also an achievement. So Immigration Service, the role that it plays, and we also tend to forget that agencies of Ministry of Interior, especially Immigration Service and NSCDC, are also deployed as part of the Special Joint Task Force in the Northeast. So they are embedded in the military. And who better to bring intelligence in terms of the identity, national identity of any perpetrator than Immigration Service, who are saddled with the constitutional mandate. So in terms of reform, in terms of capacity, in terms of technology, in terms of competence, in terms of capabilities, in terms of morale also, it has never been this good for the Immigration Service. In terms of succession, it is also seamless. In terms of deployment, it is seamless. In terms of sending immigration attachés abroad, where before you may need to know somebody high up, they pick up a call and tell somebody. Now it is purely based on competence, capacity, transparency, and capability. If you deserve it, you've earned it, you will get it. You don't need to do anything. This is the new face of the NIS under Beni Rauf Adesoji Adigbeshola.
Good to know there. In fact, we're as good as out of time, but I'll just very quickly before I let you go, I need to hear your take on the general elections with regards to, of course, security and what proactive measures are being taken, especially by agencies under the ministry, in guaranteeing safety during and after the polls. Does this plan also capture flashpoints and high-risk areas and in terms of coverages now and going forward towards the elections? Very quickly, let's just...
Well, there are operational things that cannot be discussed.
I know, I understand the very covert nature and structure of security plans.
I will answer you as elders do with a little adage or story.
Okay.
When the unfortunate incident of Kuje happened, everybody, foreign nationals, everybody, it was as if Abuja was about to be overrun. What do you feel about Abuja now?
Safe. Are you saying, in essence, the Nigerians, all walks of life, nook and cranny, should be assured of public safety, safety of life, safety of property, before, during, and after the elections?
Without a shadow of a doubt. And I don't want to sound like the quintessential optimist. But having contested an election before, won and lost and so on and so forth, if you look at our trajectory from 1999 to now, every cycle, prophets of doom from the West and their surrogates internally will forecast and say this is the end and so on and so forth. Elections will hold, they will be fair, they will be free, they will be secure. And if I were to close the book on President Muhammadu Buhari, if I was writing his book, the title would be Against All Odds.
Senior Special Advisor on Security to the Minister of Interiors and National Coordinator, Security Governance Initiative, SGI, Honorable Aliu Gebi. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on Inside. It's actually been a very insightful session, I should say. It's quite... it was quite exciting listening to you, review and, explain some of these issues. I'd like to thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
My next guest is a certified protection professional, I beg your pardon, a professional certified investigator as well, and a physical security professional. That's plenty qualifications, I should say. His experience actually spans 2 decades in the industry. Nambol Josiah Gumam, I would like to welcome you to Inside. Did I get your last name, the pronunciation of your last name right?
Yes.
I mean, what's the origin of your last name?
The name?
Yes, your last name, as a matter of fact.
Gomam, that is
Gomam,
the name.
yes.
Yeah, originated from Lantan North, the Tarok Nation.
Oh,
okay. It's one of the names that is popular and well known in
fantastic.
Yes.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So we want to talk security here, and especially how it affects the 2023 elections. I get why we must fight. I mean, win the fight against banditry, insurgency, and other criminal activities in Nigeria. And of course, these are all, top on the agenda for most of the political parties contesting in this year's election. But I'd like for you, just as we begin, to take a look at some of these plans. Lay out for me, or rather just lay out for me the imperatives of evolving a security plan, whether it's at the national level or at the subnational level, that captures the importance of economic, social, and political stabilization in Nigeria. Why is it very important for us, especially in this point of our history, with the elections coming, to have these in place?
Thank you so much for that wonderful question. After every 4 years, by the nature of our democracy, it is very critical and very important for us to conduct another peaceful election. In conducting the peaceful elections, all security measures must be put in place to guarantee the hitch-free election. Now, coming to elections management, the body that is saddled with the responsibility to conduct free and credible election, or to design a security plan for a hitch-free election, is the INEC. Unfortunately, the INEC, as we have today, does not have security on their own to control, to outline plans and manage the security for an election. That means they will have to now rely on this other security organization like the Nigerian police, the DSS, among others, to outline a plan for a conduct of election. Now, we have a body, because INEC, in trying to achieve that, they have an inter-agency consultative committee.
Yes.
The inter-agency consultative committee is responsible to outline security plan for an election, headed by the chairman of the INEC himself and the Inspector General of Police. Now, all the plans that will guarantee these elections, identifying all the vulnerable states, identifying all the potholes, what are the encumbrances, the hindrances for the conduct of election, is supposed to be outlined by this agency. However, that's why if you ask, we can tell by now, there's what we call election risk management plan.
So, I get all that you've said. So far,
yes,
you've talked about the modalities and just how these plans are evolved. The constituent bodies, people will make up the bodies, for perhaps this interagency advisory committee or committee is what we could also describe as a national committee on security.
Yes,
if you permit me to use that parlance. Why is it very important that we get it right? That's actually my question to you.
Why is it that you get it right? It's very important.
Yes.
I can tell you that the entire continent is on us, looking at to see how, if a free and fair elections we're going to conduct in Nigeria. So it is very important, because the moment we get it right is as good as it will extend beyond the boundary of the country. So if you don't get it right, the implication you did mention of both economic, social, and other things.
Yes,
of course.
Exactly.
If you didn't get it right, you don't expect any direct investment into the country. If you didn't get it right, you don't expect confidence building from the international community. If you didn't get it right, nobody will trust you, and so much will be lost.
Okay, perfect. Because I was just going to say that, correct me if I'm mistaken, but that elections are generally security operations, but as much as they are civic operations as well. So we can't deny that you know, the worry amongst Nigerians over their safety during the polls. But like we know, the authorities have assured of public safety, and INEC feels quite comfortable going ahead with the exercise on the scheduled dates. But help me put something in context. The proactive measures that can guarantee public confidence in terms of preparedness. By now, or what should this interagency committee or national security committee on the elections, as I have described it, what should they have at their disposal, you know, with regards to identifying threats, finding, maybe tracking these threats as well, you know, and monitoring both key actors and non-state actors, you know, as we go ahead, you know, towards having a safe and secure elections?
Thank you so much. Unfortunately, the interagency consultative committee ought to have outlined what we call election risk management plan.
Okay.
From the election risk management plan, we would have known by now what exactly are we expected in this particular area, this particular region, or this particular state, and what are the countermeasures, what are their proactive plans being put in place. However, to be very proactive in this, we expect engagement both at the local level with all the main actors, traditional institutions from various aspects in the country, various state, local government, villages in the country, to have now been engaging to identify some of the hindrances that could put a danger to this to election. In order to even prevent the non-state actors from having their way during the elections, these engagements are key. How intelligent gathering, it should also be part of it. That's why I think in the plan is being made known to Nigerians. The election risk management plan, all these things would have known. But I believe that behind the scenes, they are working very hard to see that the election is hit-free. And then again, other measures which I believe they must have put in place, the INEC itself, in conjunction with this body, which they are also members. You know, we have 3 cycles during the election.
Yes.
And if we adhere to this, the tendency of conducting a free and fair election without intimidations might be very, very obvious. The outer layer, if you want to, you have to cycle each of the polling unit. We have the outer layers in security, the outer layers. This, you could station military at the outer layers with arm. You also have the inner layers. You could also still station either some armament, because the electoral act
wouldn't that scare the electorate?
No, I did mention of 3 layers.
Yes, I said so.
The layers, number 1 layers is the target, which is the polling unit itself.
Okay.
At the polling unit level, you could just allow policemen and armed policemen to be there, where people actually go to cast their vote. And the distance is being determined by those who are involved. We could create a distance. When I say, let me just give an example.
Did you just say armed policemen standing by the polling booth?
No, the ordinary policemen without arms could be stationed at the inner, at the main target, which is the polling unit.
By the way, we need to make this clear that this is your blueprint.
As a security expert, for every security arrangement
so please
to be positioned or to be made clear at the polling unit, this could go a long way. And I think INEC, they have, in previous elections, they tried to implement this.
Yes.
So
because we saw that play out in Osun, we saw that play out in where was that before Osun?
Yes.
Ekiti, we saw that play out in Ekiti before Osun, and a couple of other off-season elections that took place.
This is key because if you don't do that, there are tendency that the men of the underworld, or let me just put it, the non-state actors could have their way. But again, note, the distance in establishing these layers depends on those at the helm of the affairs. It could be 1 kilometer distant.
Okay.
So you could station armed men at 1 kilometer. Move down a little bit to like 500 meters. You could put another set of armed men, and then at the main polling unit where electorate will come and queue to cast their vote, you could just assign ordinary policemen with that gun, so that people should not get intimidated.
I reckon that you're mentioning these distances,
yes,
just so that it can also be a parameter to gauge response in the event.
Exactly,
of
that's the essence of that. And the distances I am mentioning is just is not in the electoral act. It depends on the actors who are involved in that, whatever way is convenient for them. But the fact remains this: for you to have a secured polling unit for the conduct of election, these layers are very important to stop as deterrence and to also hinder penetration.
You have monitored past elections.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure you've seen, over time, we've had skirmishes, like pockets of incidents involving, maybe not ballot snatching anymore like we used to see in the past. Yeah. But now we've seen some level of disruptions and unrest at polling units. Involving, happening in some states, in some past elections that we've had. I mean, going forward, just so we are proactive and in anticipation of that, because of course we know that INEC or the Interagency Committee would have, at this point, identify flashpoints, and we know some of the high-risk areas and states already. Are you perhaps saying that by now there are already plans in place? We're not saying them because I understand the very covert nature and structure of planning security. But are you telling our viewer, are you telling Nigerians that by now it is a guarantee that the Interagency Committee has a plan already in place to forestall issues like that?
Perfect. If you've been following the trend of the event, there have been a series of meetings between the IG and the INEC chairman. They've also gone to other states having such a meeting. Election is just less than 1 month for the presidential election. So I can tell there is no doubt that this plan has been put in place. What is left is effective implementation of this plan is what matters now. You did mention of some pocket of attacks from the polling unit. Yes, just that's the reason we put this cycles in place. If you're able to adhere to this plan of we have the main positioning the outer layers, you have the inner layers, and then the main target. All if proper measures is being put as stipulated, I'm assuring you that it might be difficult. We are not ruling out the fact that not everybody that you are seeing in the field here want the election to truly
succeed. That's very true.
So it's because of that security has to come in. For people to exercise their civic right, we must create an environment conducive for them to participate. So this has to be put in place so that you can, in case of anything, that we have a very strong response team that could respond. Depends on the degree of the threat or the level of the threat. If it's becoming very obvious, we could ask, mind you, even the Electoral Act did not stop any of this agency from participating in the election. Depending on the level of threat, you could use them.
Very well then. I'm taking a look at not at the manifesto per se, because I did take a couple of notes. I'd like for us to move on to review the manifesto of some of the contending parties in the election, especially the major ones, whose candidates are vying for the position of president. Let's begin with the PDP. I don't know how familiar you are with that's of course, the party manifesto of the PDP. The candidate, former vice president, Atiku Abubakar, released a national security 7-point agenda that it emphasizes restructuring, talks about funding of security agencies, talks about cleaning up the recruitment process. He also did mention installing a special presidential welfare initiative. He did also go ahead to talk about increasing the number of personnel, talked about deploying non-kinetic measures like dialogue with non-state actors to quell dissent and unrest. And also part of the 7-point agenda includes community policing and lastly, creating synergy amongst all security agencies in the country. I mean, I know I've just reeled them out in a hurry to you, but can you just take a look at some of these policy initiatives that is mentioned, and perhaps talk a bit about just how feasible and how possible it is that all of these put together can help increase national or internal security in Nigeria.
Yes, these are actually, they are also lofty points. I want to assure you that both the PDP and the APC, there are a lot of security experts in both the parties. And for that reasons, they always sit down and look at how best you could achieve. If you look at this, they are almost synchronous. When I mean that, they are almost similar with each other.
Okay.
All the plans put in place are implementable. What is key is political will. Like you did mention, the issue of recruitment. That is where we always get it wrong. You must make sure that you do a proper recruitment, a proper vetting.
Based on merit and excellence.
Yes, on merit. I can tell you, if I want to give you an example with myself, how comes I become a security expert? I was shortlisted into the Nigerian Defense Academy, 2003. But I could not find my way. Despite all my interests and the knowledge, the interest I have in the security, I couldn't get it. That means I would have been better me perhaps than my colleagues are lieutenant colonel or colonel. I couldn't make my way because if things were to be done on merit, I strongly believe that I would have been picked. So if we allow the recruitment process to take place in a very transparent manner, get the right people with the right interest to partake into the system, you've answered one of the first questions.
And then the Special Presidential Welfare Initiative, I reckon that would be different from the welfare to be provided generically or generally to officers. This, he says, is a Special Presidential Welfare Initiative. What do you think?
This could be is within the purview of the president to decide on how best he could motivate his security to perform. It's not only common in Nigeria, even in other parts of the world, the Western world. The security personnel are specially given attention depending on what exactly you want them to achieve at a point in time. So I don't think that is something that cannot be achieved. Very
quickly, let's move along to that of the APC, the presidential candidate of the ruling Progressive Congress. Of course, Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu has he said if elected, his administration will be committed to mobilizing all assets within its power, in securing the country. How does he intend to do this? Well, he's looking at security as a function of resources. He says he's going to build a security trust fund. He's going to train, increase training of personnel, and also welfare for personnel. He did also say he would deploy technology, and this one caught my interest when he said he will build local and national peace and reconciliation mechanism for non-kinetic solutions. It's also quite clear that he will foster an environment that will allow the National Assembly to debate the issue of state police. What do you think of this plan?
They're a fantastic plan as well. If you look at it, I told you that they have a lot of similarities together.
Yes, very true. You did say
so. These plans, they are fantastic plans. The National Assembly to deliberate on the issue of state police. While some of us, we wonder why the issue of state police has become so problematic all these years.
Yes.
The fact remains is this: if you go to other part of the world, even common Kenya here, at the a private security guard guiding the bank.
The thing is that I think most of the candidates are rooting for state police. Yes. I think the point is how to go about it. Would it require a constitutional review? Would you foster an environment that allows for that? So now the candidate is saying he would foster an environment that allows for
yes,
debate
we may to allow it to work without being challenged.
Yes.
In the law court. It is important for the Constitution to be reviewed because the issue of state police is in the Constitution. The issue of policing is in the Constitution.
Also in the Police Act.
Yeah, Police Act. So allowing the National Assembly to deliberate on it, yet it could give a president some outright power.
Yes.
To allow some function or some state police to be established. But I think to also provide enough funding, not just leaving it alone for just an institution. There is need for the Constitution to be reviewed to accommodate all this. But we strongly believe that we have reached a level, or we are gradually approaching a level where state police is not avoidable.
You know, unfortunately, we're fast losing time. I would have also raised the issue of the other parties. There are other major parties contending in this year's election. There's Labour Party, there's NMPP, there's SDP, there's Accord. I mean, there are 18 of them, as a matter of fact. Yeah. Does any of the plans by any of these parties jump out at you? Does anything strike out in any of their security plans?
Virtually, most of the aspirants, everybody want a secure country for them to implement their policy.
That's very true.
I did not come across anyone that don't want the country to be secured. No one talk about disintegration of the country, which is very, very fundamental. That means that virtually all of them have focus on how we can secure it for us to attract investment, create an enabling environment for our people to carry out their business without being intimidated.
On a final note, just before I let you go, would you very quickly, maybe if possible in a bullet point format, give us, itemize what you think or measures you think that we can take to proactively and effectively manage, safeguard Nigerians, you know, before, during and after the elections?
Yes. All the security plan, the risk assessment plan that for this election, I told you that it must have been developed by the consultative committee. But again, some of the proactive measures that we need to be put in place is to see that all the personnel engaged in protecting or managing this election, especially like sensitive materials, should be properly secured and deployed. And I may advise in some of the high-risk areas, for instance, like the southeast, some of these things could be, you don't need to go into a low profile to deploy some of these materials.
Okay.
What we have just realized, because when you go in full arms escort, sometimes it's vulnerable for an attack.
So it may be advisable
to allow some play a low profile movement in some of these things. And effective personnel should be deployed to protect all the polling units. Just like I said, we shouldn't forget that principle, that the cycle, the three cycle are key.
Yes.
If you do that with enough personnel deployed at every point, at every level, I'm assuring you that we'll have a very peaceful election.
I'd like to thank you so much. I mean, this is a critical matter. It's one that we'll discuss even during the elections.
Yes.
And well, after the elections, we will be able to take a look back and see how this all played out. I'd like to thank you so much, Nambal Josiah Gumam, security risks consultant, you know, for sharing your thoughts with us here on issues. I'm pretty sure I murdered your last name, but I mean, I hope you forgive me for that. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so delighted to share my thought.
Amina Mohammed, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Agencies and stakeholders to proactively tackle these challenges.
Women in most countries of the world constitute about 50% of registered voters.
Williams, reporting for Dateline 360.
In Jos, Caleb Gochin, Dateline 360.
Dateline 360. Shidi Okrafo.
For Dateline 360.
In Lagos, Michael Olaleye.
Reporting for Dateline 360.
I am Omosola Omojola. Thanks for tuning in to Dateline 360.
And that's it on this episode of the program. To join us same time next week for more on Insight. My name is Nnamdi Odipo. See you then.